Hello, my dear friends. My name is Eleanor and I'm 82 years old. Today I'm going to share with you the most shocking and life-changing story of my life, one that turned my world upside down and taught me that sometimes the people we think we know best are complete strangers. Before I begin, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from because your messages always give me strength. This story takes place in 1978 in a small town in Pennsylvania where my husband, Dr. William Henderson, was the most respected physician for miles around. I was 36 years old, and we had been married for 15 years. William was not just a doctor. He was the doctor that everyone in town trusted with their lives, their secrets, and their most vulnerable moments. Back then, being married to the town doctor meant something special. People looked up to us, respected us, and trusted us with their deepest concerns. Our house was the big white colonial on Elm Street with the wraparound porch and the perfectly manicured lawn. William drove a brand new Cadillac every 2 years, and I drove a Lincoln Continental that was the envy of every woman at the country club. We had everything that looked perfect from the outside. 3 beautiful children, Michael who was 14, Sarah who was 12, and little Rebecca who was 8. William's medical practice was thriving. He was making excellent money for those times, around $75,000 a year, which was a fortune in 1978. We took family vacations to Europe, the children went to private schools, and I was active in every important social organization in town. William had his medical practice in a beautiful brick building downtown with 2 other doctors and a staff of 6 nurses. He was particularly known for his work with children and families, and parents would drive from 3 counties away just to have Dr. Henderson examine their sick children. He had this gentle way with patients that made everyone feel safe and cared for. If you're enjoying this story so far, please take a moment to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest stories. For 15 years, I thought I knew my husband completely. He was methodical, professional, and dedicated to his work. He would leave the house every morning at exactly 7:30, wearing his perfectly pressed shirts that I ironed myself, carrying his black leather medical bag that had been a gift from his father when he graduated medical school. William was also very involved in our community. He served on the hospital board, was a deacon at our Presbyterian church, and coached Little League Baseball for our son Michael's team. Everyone in town saw him as the ideal husband, father, and citizen. I was proud to be Mrs. Dr. Henderson, and I thought our life together was everything a woman could ask for. But looking back now, there were signs that I completely missed or chose to ignore. William had always been particular about his appearance, but sometime in early 1978, he became almost obsessive about it. He started spending much longer getting ready in the mornings, using expensive cologne that he had never worn before, and he even changed his hairstyle to something more modern and fashionable. He also began working much longer hours at the practice. He would often call to say he had emergency patients or important meetings that would keep him late. At first, I was proud of his dedication, but it started happening 3 or 4 nights a week, which seemed excessive even for a busy doctor. Another thing that should have raised red flags was his relationship with his staff. William had always been professional with his nurses and assistants, but he started talking about one particular nurse much more frequently. His name was David, and William would often mention how capable David was, how he was such a help with difficult cases, and how lucky the practice was to have someone so skilled and dedicated. David had been hired about 6 months earlier, fresh out of nursing school. William had interviewed several candidates for the position, but he was absolutely insistent that David was the best choice. At the time, I thought it was wonderful that William had found such a competent assistant. Please take a moment to like this video if you can relate to those times when warning signs are right in front of you, but you don't see them clearly. The first time I met David was at the annual hospital charity gala in the spring of 1978. He was a young man, probably about 28 years old, very handsome with blonde hair and blue eyes. He was well-dressed, articulate, and charming. When William introduced us, I noticed that David seemed nervous and kept looking at William in a way that struck me as unusual, but I couldn't quite put my finger on why. Throughout the evening, I observed that William and David seemed to have an easy, comfortable relationship. They would laugh together at inside jokes, and David would touch William's arm when making a point in conversation. At the time, I thought it was nice that William had such a good working relationship with his staff. But over the next few months, David started becoming more present in our lives outside of work. William would mention that David was interested in learning about golf, so William offered to teach him at our country club. David was apparently having car trouble, so William would sometimes give him rides home after work. David was new to town and didn't know many people, so William invited him to our barbecues and family gatherings. I welcomed David into our social circle because I thought it was kind of William to help a young professional get established in the community. David was always polite to me and wonderful with our children. He never did anything inappropriate or said anything that made me uncomfortable. If anything, he seemed to go out of his way to be helpful and charming. But I started noticing small changes in William's behavior at home. He seemed distracted during family conversations, like his mind was somewhere else. He would sometimes get phone calls in the evening that he would take privately in his study, saying they were work-related. He also started taking business trips more frequently, often with very short notice. One evening in late summer, William came home and announced that he and David needed to attend a medical conference in Philadelphia for 3 days. He said it was an important opportunity for David's continuing education and that the practice would benefit from both of them attending. This seemed reasonable to me, so I didn't question it. When William returned from that trip, something was different about him. He seemed happier, more energetic, but also more secretive. He started receiving mail at the office instead of at home, saying it was easier to manage his professional correspondence that way. He also bought a new wardrobe, much more fashionable and expensive than his usual conservative style. If this story is resonating with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes we need to know we're not alone in these confusing situations. The turning point came in October of 1978. William had told me he would be working late because of a medical emergency, but when I called the practice around 8 o'clock to see if he wanted me to save him dinner, the answering service told me that the office had been closed since 5:30 and there were no emergency calls that evening. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. This was the first time I had caught William in an outright lie, and I didn't know what to think. I tried to convince myself that there was some kind of miscommunication, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The next day, I decided to surprise William by bringing him lunch at the office. When I arrived, his receptionist seemed flustered and told me that Dr. Henderson was in a consultation and couldn't be disturbed. But as I was leaving, I saw William's car in the parking lot, and through his office window, I could see 2 figures standing very close together. I went around to the side of the building where William's private office window faced the alley. What I saw through that window changed my life forever. William and David were embracing, not like colleagues, not like friends, but like lovers. They were kissing with a passion and intimacy that took my breath away. I stood there frozen, unable to process what I was seeing. This was my husband of 15 years, the father of my children, the respected doctor that everyone in town admired. And he was in the arms of another man in his office in the middle of the day, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I don't know how long I stood there watching them. Time seemed to stop completely. Finally, I managed to walk back to my car, but I was shaking so badly I could barely drive home. When I got there, I went straight to our bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, trying to make sense of what I had just witnessed. My first thought was that I must have misunderstood what I was seeing. Maybe David was upset about something, and William was comforting him. Maybe there was some kind of medical emergency that required close contact. But deep down, I knew exactly what I had seen, and there was no innocent explanation for it. That evening, William came home at his usual time, acting completely normal. He asked about my day, helped Rebecca with her homework, and discussed weekend plans for Michael's baseball game. His ability to act as if nothing had happened made me realize that this wasn't something new or impulsive. This was an established relationship that he had been hiding from me and everyone else. I didn't confront him that night, because I needed time to think and plan. In 1978, homosexuality was not something that was openly discussed or accepted, especially in small conservative towns like ours. I had no idea what this revelation would mean for our family, our social standing, or our financial security. Please subscribe if you haven't already, because sharing these stories helps other people navigate these impossible situations. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention to William's behavior and putting together pieces that I had previously ignored. The late nights, the business trips, the new clothes, the increased interest in his appearance, the special relationship with David, all of it suddenly made perfect sense. I also realized that this explained some things about our marriage that had been troubling me for years. William had always been somewhat distant physically, and our intimate relationship had never been particularly passionate. I had attributed this to his busy schedule and professional stress, but now I understood that the problem wasn't stress or fatigue. The most painful part wasn't just the betrayal or the deception. It was the realization that my entire adult life had been built on a lie. Every social event where people congratulated us on our perfect marriage, every time someone told me how lucky I was to have such a wonderful husband, every family photo and holiday celebration, all of it had been a performance. I spent a week gathering my thoughts and trying to decide what to do. I couldn't talk to any of my friends because William's reputation was so important to his medical practice and our family's standing in the community. I couldn't talk to my family because they lived in another state and wouldn't understand the complexities of the situation. Finally, I decided that I needed to confront William directly, but I wanted to do it in a way that would give me some control over what happened next. I chose a Saturday afternoon when the children were all at friends' houses, and we would have complete privacy. I told William that I needed to talk to him about something important, and I asked him to sit down in our living room. I said that I had seen him with David at his office, and that I knew about their relationship. I didn't ask questions or demand explanations. I simply stated what I knew and waited for his response. The look on William's face went from confusion to recognition to absolute terror in a matter of seconds. He started to deny it at first, but when I described exactly what I had seen, he broke down completely. He put his head in his hands and started crying like I had never seen him cry before. When he finally composed himself enough to speak, William told me that he had been struggling with these feelings his entire life. He said that when he married me, he thought he could make them go away by being a good husband and father. He said that meeting David had forced him to confront the truth about himself, and that he was deeply sorry for the pain he was causing me and our children. William begged me not to tell anyone, not because he was ashamed of David, but because he knew it would destroy his medical practice and potentially our family's financial security. In 1978, a doctor who was discovered to be homosexual would likely lose his license and definitely lose his patients. The conversation that followed was one of the most difficult of my life. William admitted that he loved David, and that their relationship had been going on for over 6 months. He said that he still cared about me and the children, but that he could no longer pretend to be someone he wasn't. If you're going through something similar, please know that there are no easy answers, but you deserve honesty and respect in any relationship. We spent the next several hours talking about what this meant for our future. William wanted to try to maintain our marriage publicly while continuing his relationship with David privately, but I told him that was impossible. I couldn't live a lie anymore, and I wouldn't ask our children to grow up in a home built on deception. We agreed that William would move out of the house within 2 weeks, and that we would tell people that we were separating due to irreconcilable differences. We would not mention David or the true reason for our divorce, both to protect William's practice and to shield our children from gossip and speculation. The hardest part was telling our children. We sat them down together and explained that sometimes adults grow apart and need to live separately, even when they still care about each other. Michael, who was 14, asked a lot of questions and clearly knew there was more to the story than we were telling. Sarah and Rebecca were more focused on practical concerns like which house they would live in and whether they would still see their father regularly. William moved into an apartment across town, and David moved in with him about a month later. To the outside world, David was just William's roommate who was helping with rent while he established himself in the community. Most people in town assumed that William was going through a midlife crisis and that our separation was temporary. But within our close social circle, rumors started spreading almost immediately. People noticed that William and David were spending a lot of time together outside of work. They were seen having dinner together, going to movies together, and traveling together to medical conferences. In a small town, people notice everything, and it didn't take long for speculation to begin. The rumors reached a crescendo about 6 months after William moved out. One of the other doctors in William's practice had apparently observed some behavior between William and David that made him suspicious. Instead of confronting William directly, this doctor started gossiping with other medical professionals in the area. One day, I received a phone call from Janet Morrison, the wife of another doctor in town. She told me that people were saying terrible things about William and David, and she wanted to know if I knew what was really going on. I told her that William and I were divorced, and that his personal life was no longer my concern. But the damage was done. Within a week, the rumors had spread throughout the entire medical community and beyond. Parents started pulling their children out of William's practice. The hospital board called an emergency meeting. The local newspaper started asking questions about the town's moral standards and family values. Please take a moment to like this video if you understand how quickly a person's entire life can change based on other people's judgments and prejudices. William's medical practice collapsed within 2 months. Parents refused to bring their children to see him, and adult patients found excuses to switch to other doctors. The other physicians in his practice asked him to leave, saying that his presence was affecting their ability to serve their patients effectively. David was fired from his nursing position immediately, and he was unable to find another job anywhere in the area. The two of them eventually moved to San Francisco, where William was able to establish a new practice, and David found work at a large hospital where their relationship was more accepted. Our divorce was finalized about a year after our separation. William provided financial support for the children, but the amount was much less than it would have been if his practice had remained successful. I had to sell our house and move to a smaller home on the other side of town. The social consequences for me and our children were significant. Some people blamed me for not keeping my husband satisfied, while others pitted me for being married to a man who was deceiving me. Either way, our family's reputation in the community was permanently damaged. Michael had the hardest time with everything. As a teenager, he was old enough to understand the implications of the rumors about his father, and he was angry about having to defend our family's honor at school and in social situations. Sarah and Rebecca were younger and more resilient, but they also struggled with the changes in our family's circumstances. For me personally, the experience was devastating but also liberating in unexpected ways. For the first time in my adult life, I was forced to be completely independent. I had to get a job, manage our finances, and make all the decisions about our family's future without consulting anyone else. I found work as a secretary at the local high school, which didn't pay much but provided steady income and good benefits. The work was satisfying because I was helping students and families navigate important decisions about education and career planning. I discovered that I had skills and capabilities that I had never had the opportunity to develop during my marriage. Over time, I also discovered that many women in our community had similar stories of betrayal and deception, though not necessarily involving the same circumstances as mine. There was a network of divorced and widowed women who supported each other through financial hardships, social ostracism, and the challenges of raising children alone. The children eventually adjusted to our new circumstances. Michael went on to college and became a teacher, Sarah became a social worker, and Rebecca became a nurse. All three of them grew up to be compassionate, independent adults who understand that families come in many different forms and that love and honesty are more important than social conventions. I never remarried, partly because I enjoyed my independence and partly because I was cautious about trusting my judgment in relationships. But I had several close friendships with both men and women, and I built a rich, fulfilling life that didn't depend on anyone else's approval or support. As for William and David, I heard through mutual acquaintances that they built a successful life together in San Francisco. William's medical practice thrived in a more accepting environment, and David advanced in his nursing career. They were together for over 20 years, until William passed away from a heart attack in the early 2000s. Looking back now, more than 40 years later, I have complicated feelings about everything that happened. I'm grateful that William eventually found the courage to live authentically, even though it took him 15 years of marriage to me to figure that out. I'm sad that our society in 1978 was so unforgiving that it destroyed his career and forced our family into financial hardship. But I'm also proud of how our children and I survived and thrived despite the scandal and social pressure. We learned that our worth as people didn't depend on other people's opinions or approval. We learned that honesty, even when it's painful, is better than living a lie. The lesson I want to share with everyone watching today is that life will sometimes surprise you in ways that seem impossible to survive. People you trust will disappoint you, circumstances will change without warning, and you'll discover strengths you never knew you had. If you're facing a situation that seems hopeless, please know that you can rebuild your life from almost anything. It won't be easy, and it won't be quick, but you can create something meaningful and beautiful from the pieces of whatever has fallen apart. Don't let other people's judgments define your worth, and don't be afraid to start over if that's what it takes to live with integrity and self-respect. You deserve a life built on truth, even if the truth is complicated and difficult. Thank you for listening to my story today. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories and experiences help create a community where people can find support and understanding during their most challenging times. Until next time, remember that you are stronger and more resilient than you know.